Hi, thanks for watching. I realise that the Boris News conference is at 7 p.m. This will be all over by then. I realise that the Boris News conference is at 7 p.m. Hi, thanks for watching. I realise that the Boris News conference is at 7 p.m. This will be all over by then. Over the past year, 4 terms at uni, my cohort and I have completed our films for presentation at the end of December last year. We all worked under COVID restrictions that placed additional requirements above those customarily placed on making a film. This was my submission for an MA in documentary film. We all had to make our films individually, each of us learning to create the footage, operating the camera, editing the footage into a story, colour grade the shots and sound design, and finally writing the copy for each film. Our films had a limit of 20 minutes. Mine is just under 17. It is surprisingly difficult to keep the length down. Before we started, it seemed more challenging just to fill 20 minutes. The problem in the end was what to leave out. When authoring a book, they say that it should be about something personal. The same is in filmmaking. After that, it gets trickier. 30 years ago, I was in the RAF, posted to Berlin in 1986, and on the 9th of November 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. This film is about some colleagues and I that were there over that period. It is not about military things, but more about how Berlin was and how it has changed now. This is the intro that were sent by, instead of, I'll show this first. This is that was the introduction to our 12 films. Unfortunately, I can't show any other than my own. I have no permission. A real shame because they were really brilliant, all of them. I will now show my full film. Behind the Iron Curtain, 100 miles inside East Germany, Berlin was divided by a wall. In 1961, this created West Berlin. Overnight, on the 13th of August, families were split in two. From 1986 to 1992, I was in Berlin with my colleagues and friends. In 1986, I was in the Royal Air Force. One of my most enjoyable postings was to spend 6 years in Berlin. After a gap of 30 years, I have returned to see how the city has reinvented itself. I am revisiting some places that have a special meaning to me and my colleagues. These are Mike Hancock, Douglas Shorter, Frank Morley and John Conlon. We look back after our time in Berlin and the consequences of 1989 when the wall fell. I'm sharing this story because rather than the most films that are made of Berlin is all about spies and all that sort of stuff, I want to show a different side of Berlin rather than the spy city that its common name is. It was also a home to hundreds, if not thousands, of Western Forces troops.
My first impressions when I got off the plane were, oh, it's another RAF camp. Runways, hangars, that sort of thing. But then after a few weeks I thought, this is pretty good, I like this.
I found that Berlin was fairly different from what I was expecting. It was a lot greener than I expected. I was thinking more concrete jungle because of all the films you've seen and TV reports. As regards to my expectations of being in Berlin, because I'd lived on RAF camps all my life, my father was RAF, it wasn't much different until I went off the camp and went downtown. Different language, different culture, but as I say, because I spoke the language and got better and better, it was quite an experience.
Ooh, it's difficult to say whether I was prepared or not because I didn't really know what to expect. I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't as enclosed as I thought it was going to be. But you're always aware that there could be foreign people out there trying to entrap you. I trained as a Russian linguist and then I further trained as a German linguist. And we worked at a place called Teufelsberg, which was basically a listening post. If you see American videos about the place, you'd think we were all spies, but basically we were monitoring air-to-air and air-to-ground traffic of the Russian Air Force and German Air Force. Certainly did know that the area by Ghetto, just the other side of the wall, had one of the biggest certainly one of the biggest tank regiments outside of Russia. Sat there because they had a big training area over the back, which we often heard when you'd hear their alarms or sirens go off, and then they would you'd hear the tanks trundling up and down their range, firing their main guns, as well as machine guns.
Berlin was open 24 hours a day. There was no licensing hours, just open until the individuals wanted to close. It was everything about Berlin was excellent.
To be honest, no, I never felt trapped at all while I was in there. There was always, you could get out. I mean, if something kicked off, that would be a different matter, but for normal daily life, no. You either flew out or you got a train or you drove. There was always, you could go somewhere, which we did quite often.
The city itself is a fantastic place. I absolutely love Berlin, and if I could afford it, I'd move there tomorrow. We had real seasons in Berlin. Summer was hot, winter was cold, snowy and icy. And I remember one winter, I think it was 79, I was coming back from my German course and we got the ferry to Hamburg. The ship was actually breaking ice as it came up the estuary, and we had to drive to Berlin in a snowstorm. We couldn't get all the way to Berlin, we had to stay at Helmstedt.
Situated deep in the Grunewald lies Teufelsberg, the Devil's Mountain. It now looks like an art installation, but once was centre of operations for 26SU. Most of us spent our working time here. This is the main entrance to Teufelsberg. So in the winter we used to go outside and they had a little sign outside and it says, be careful, it's cold outside, be careful, skins at -60.
No.
I used to run between the main building there and this in just a jumper and a shirt.
And they thought you were very British.
Well, I thought, yes. That's just massive, isn't it?
I reckon that's just, they were building something there and just the wall fell down and they didn't finish it. As you were travelling along on the railways on the east side, on the west side, you could see the east side from the railway. And I do remember once seeing the facades of the buildings that were facing me on the train,
All nicely
were all
painted.
nicely painted, but if you could just see around the corner, and you could,
Yeah.
they were falling down. They were grey and
Yes, that's the
Dreadful
main
condition.
impression I got, was it was grey.
yeah.
Nothing advanced from the 1950s.
No, it hadn't. What, from 1945? They really didn't have the money.
No
to,
infrastructure, no nothing.
No, didn't have the money to modernise it.
No. Well, it all went to the defence, didn't it?
There's more money been spent here than there was in East Germany.
Yep.
How the East Germans were treated, because I think they were treated incredibly badly, worse than I realised when I was stationed here. I didn't know about it. Didn't know about all the detail until later. So I did feel sorry for them afterwards.
Do you think that was a deliberate, not being told about how bad it was?
Well, we were told, but until you actually speak to somebody who's gone through the experience, you don't. I didn't believe everything I was told.
Didn't twig, no. No, there is that.
I didn't.
The
I
seeing is
believe
believing, isn't it?
It couldn't be that bad, I thought.
Yeah.
It's all, we're getting the propaganda.
Well, the pictures I saw, they're still using horse and carts.
I saw trains, steam trains, and I was going past on a train again, a guy pulling a plough with horses in front of him. The straps around him and the horses in front of him.
John's living here with his German partner.
My partner won't go to the east unless she really has to. It's still in her head and lots of people's heads. East-west, east-west, it's still there, that difference. There's no north-south, nobody talks about that.
No.
East-west.
And that'll exist for at least a
couple
generation. won't it?
generations, yeah.
We had very limited physical contact, but we did have an electronic contact. We passed messages and that sort of stuff.
You have a social contact as well.
Yeah, social contact
The
as well.
American British picnic every year.
American picnics was good.
Work was enjoyable, but the social life after work was incredible. It was a really excellent place to be. We used to meet in town at 8 o'clock and come back home at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was a regular occurrence, going out, staying out all night. Sometimes stayed out all night and went straight to work. When there was a call out called Exercise Rocking Horse in Berlin, and you were called out and you had to man up military positions. Trying to get the Air Force to be military is quite a challenge. There was always a story that once you got off the plane, your first time in Berlin, the East German guards had taken your photograph from their watchtowers.
The Operation Country Cousin was, there was several operations that were tannoyed around the station, and Country Cousin was called if there was a defector coming across the wall into the station. It happened when an East German, I believe, flew a light aircraft and landed at Gatow and claimed refuge and asylum, which was then up to the various aircraft techies at Gatow to take the aircraft to pieces and ship it back over to East Germany, just in case somebody else wanted to have a go, I suppose.
Up by Teagle, or up by the Teaglesy, there's another series of lakes, and of course down the middle of it is the border, and just marked off with concrete buoys with the East German flag on. And to their side of it, this border was a little patrol boat. Pilot and the observer just went, "Oh, look at that down there." And the next thing I know, they've flipped the helicopter. They've gone up a bit, couple of other, probably about another 2,000 feet. Flipped the helicopter over, dived down, and as they're going down over the top, across the border, over the top of this little patrol boat, giving it taka 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 as they flew over it. But on the back was this little East German conscript with his AK-47s, looking up and going, and started panicking, trying to get his rifle, and I'm thinking, I'm going to die here.
Berlin, after the wall came down, it got busier, obviously, with people moving backwards and forwards across the borders. The biggest, most noticeable change, especially around the surrounds of the main city. So we were in Gatow, Kladow area. There was also Charlottenburg, Spandau, Wedding. So in those areas, the biggest difference we saw was lack of food in the supermarkets.
Oh, I just left Berlin. I left in September of 1989, and of course the wall fell down in...
Just missed it
in October. I was in the UK when it fell down, but I watched it all on TV.
Dougie's got the same sort of answer.
Yeah,
he went.
He was in UK.
He was
as well,
on his corporal's course.
That's right, yeah.
So that was a 6 week, and he just missed it. Came back and...
God, I was annoyed that I'd missed all that.
What? So was he?
Really, really annoyed.
We were on shift, I think, and the military police phoned Gatow to say, what do we do? We've got a lot of East Germans at Checkpoint Charlie saying they can come through. But the RMPs knew nothing about it. They were then told that it's true. The borders were open the gates and let them through.
To be honest, quite stunned. Never expected the wall to fall down. Yeah, I don't think anybody did. I mean, only a few weeks before we'd been on exercise to practice defending the airfield prior to doing a runner and going off with the army into the centre of Berlin.
Chuffed. Excellent. I thought it was wonderful. It should have come down a lot. Well, it shouldn't have gone up in the first place, but the fact that it did go up and stayed up for so long was horrible. But it came down.
It's got to be better, hasn't it? Having a country split down the middle, it's got to be better to have it unified. It's got to be better now, politically. But at least you knew who your enemy was then. Now you don't know who the enemy is. Oh, there's so many. The Russians are still the enemy, but they're not on the other side of the wall. Everybody's the enemy.
It's a symbol of oppression, the way that the East was trying to protect itself from a brain drain. It was the only way they thought that they could do it, which was totally wrong. Surprised that it survived 30 years, and it took a mistake to bring it down. It should never happen again. Never. In 1992, we all went home, taking our toys with us. But the game goes on. Now, instead of one identifiable target, there are many disparate ones, much harder to identify. Thanks for watching. Any comments? I'll try and answer them. Thanks for watching. Any comments? I'll try and answer them. The film took nearly 6 months to make in the end. Went out to Berlin twice. The second time missed the cut-off by 4 hours, I think. Otherwise we would have been in quarantine for 14 days. And we were only supposed to be in Berlin for 5. So that was fun. Yeah, so nothing, I suppose. Thanks, Norman. I passed, by the way. I got a B, which is a merit. Oh. If nobody's got anything else, I'll end the transmission there. Going back to radio things. I'll end it now. I'll end the stream now. Thank you.